So this is Dr. Manjula Pooja Shroff, MD and CEO of Kalorex Group of Institutions, Ahmedabad. So under our belt, we run about 55 institutions spread across 65,000 students over the last 27 years. Now, you saw a video which was our clone and AI avatar. The first question that we have come to you is why a clone and AI avatar in today's segment, right, in today's world? Particularly, why a clone and an AI avatar by a group of people who are into education? So that would be a hard question that would have come to your mind first thing first. So let's hear it out straight from Dr. Shroff as to why an AI avatar and a clone, particularly from an educationalist.
Good morning, everybody. Such a pleasure to be back. Brainfeed feels like home by now. Every year we are back. Whenever they have an event, we are back. Coming to the AI question, I'm sure that everybody understands that if you're part of education, you will confront AI. That is an understanding that is given. But why parenting in AI? Let me come straight to that. Never before in the history of mankind have human beings come so close to artificial intelligence. Never before in the history of mankind, and as parents, will we confront artificial intelligence that will not only affect our upbringing of the children, but actually put them at a disadvantage. As all of you know from the social media, robots are all over the place. They're serving food. They are police dogs for sniffing at drugs. But take an example that will be more meaningful to you. They're already playing chess, badminton, and table tennis. Let's take the example of badminton. Your child is going to grow up and play games. Your child is going to play some outdoor games. When the child plays the outdoor game, and chances are they're going to play it with the robots, what are the chances they're going to win? The chance is zero. Because any artificial intelligence is good on iteration. Anything that you have to do the same thing over and over, the bot will be better than the human being. So if it's like a forehand, like a backhand, the bot is going to be better than the child. So the child has to learn to fail. The first lesson that parents have to teach children is fear and failure. Unfortunately, we don't do that. We protect our children. We protect our children from the worst situations as long as we can. And we are well-meaning parents, not that we don't want to, but they will have to get exposed. This book starts from the very beginning, from the womb. The first couple of years, from the toddler to infant to preschool to foundation years, it only talks about fears. We have a whole, when we were researching, it was alarming to see the list of fears that children go through. Fear of darkness, fear of strangers, fear of loud noises, fear of wardrobes, fear of heights, fear of doctors, fear of insects and animals, fear of rejection by friends, fear of ghosts, fear of losing loved ones, fear of evil people, fear of disappointing parents, fear of failure at school, and fear of world events. And we'll talk a little bit more about that, but it is important that at a psychological level, we deal with fear. Otherwise, that can become a limiting belief as the children grow up.
I will just pick up from where you left, talking about fears. You have been from the royal family. You've been a princess and a Maharani yourself. But when you also, even after being in the royal family, you had to fight for your education. You had to fight for your own survival in terms of upbringings. You have seen death at a close quarter because most of your elders passed away at a very early age of yours. And from there on, you moved on to Delhi. You fought Delhi for your own self, and then from there on, went ahead and established these institutions that you run today. Any other person of your age and of your, young, mind would have left it halfway, but you turned it hard. What was in your mind when you did the same?
So he's referring to an incident or a chapter from my previous book, which is like a biography. So yes, I've had the good fortune of being born with, as they say, a golden spoon. Now, to a lot of you, when you think of a princess or somebody who's born in a palace. It's a very romantic notion. But let me tell you that despite the fact that I believe it's very good karma to be born in a royal family, there were no guarantees. There were no guarantees that my life 20s, I would have lost, and I did lose, every responsible person in my life. My father, my mother, my younger brother, my uncle, my aunt, my bua, my nani with who I was growing up. I did not have any adult guide me by the time I was in my teens. So when you're confronted so closely with death, you start to look inside. So yes, of course, I had the choice to swim or sing. Thankfully, I chose to swim. Thankfully, my inner, the third chord in electricity, there's the red, the green and the yellow. It is the yellow grounding that holds you.
Lovely.
Thankfully, I was grounded.
Lovely. And it's a lot about the foundation in your parenting, right? Particularly, it seems that fear is a very big aspect in a child's, hindrance to growth, right? So, what do you have to say about fear, and how many kinds of fear do you see that this book covers, and how does you take it further from there?
So, of course, dealing with fears, we've tried to talk about fears, how you can very simply talk to children and overcome the fear. I would like to move on to talking about when parents are younger, when children are younger, you're also a young parent. There are issues like discipline, there are issues like tantrum, there are issues like sibling rivalry, there are household help, negotiating. Negotiation with children start at a very, very young age. We may not know it, but they're always negotiating. Are we able to do it positively? That is the question we need to ask. In India, parenting is rather authoritative. It is like, I told you so. And when you do that, of course, we induce more fear in the child. But we are also creating a thought revolution. They are thinking that you are able to scold me, you are able to shout at me. Sometimes parents hit, which is not appropriate because it's against the rights of the children. No physical hitting. But if you hit a child, the child is thinking, because you are older and more physically strong, you're hitting me. When I become older, I'll hit. And that's how they become bullies at school. They have to hit somebody because they got hit at home. So it's important that we need to understand the psychology of children in order to have balanced children.
Beautiful, beautiful. Moving ahead to the next segment, which is the pre-teen segment, it is said that pre-teen is a very challenging phase of life for a parent, right? Teen is a different thing altogether, right? We all know it's highly challenging, but pre-teen is equally challenging. It is one time where you really feel as a parent, or where is my young child? Would you like to kindly give some elaboration on this?
So this book is, I believe, like a handbook. At least I've written it like that. While I sit here taking the claim, I must say that the book is data researched. The book is actually a compilation of work that our teachers, our mental health experts, counselors have done. The book has case studies, simulation exercises, activities, everything that are real. It starts from fetal talk, infant talk, toddler's talk, preschooler's talk, foundational years talk, primary years talk, pre-teens talk, teen talk, and tough talk. Teens, everybody understands. Pre-teens, or what we call tween, Tween, is that age just before teens. So before 13, about 10 to 12 maybe. Why that has become significant is because a lot of things happen at that age. We believe that psychological changes, physiological changes, biological changes, emotional changes, sociability, there are so many changes. And here's a little child trying to deal with it. Since everybody is an educator or at least a parent, let me have a very open example. Sometimes when the child is only 10 years, like class 5, they start to menstruate. And you know what happens? We of course explain to the children how to maintain hygiene, what is a sanitary napkin. But we forget that there's a psychological and emotional element of menstruation, which means at age 10, puberty has happened. With puberty comes the need for intimacy. We don't explain that to the child. And if we so much as see the child talking to the opposite gender or to a boy, we are mad. We label the child. We are almost abusive. I think we need to take a whole different approach to conversations with children.
Lovely, lovely. One of the earlier chapters in this book says communication is the earliest form of sciences. What would you like to say about it?
I want to jump straight into teenage, because anybody who's here, who has dealt with teenagers, you know that they never listen. They never listen to the teachers, they never listen to the parents. And I want to explain why and how we can solve things through communication. See, what is happening is teenagers are moving from childhood to adulthood. They want to find themselves, their own entities, their own identities, their own voice. They want to feel heard. Whereas Indian parents are giving direction and authority. So we are actually on opposite sides. There's a saying that says that if you don't listen to your children in primary school, they will not listen to you in middle and high school. So we need to start to listen to our children. What is getting compounded is the whole world has become so open. You think that you're rearing your children at home, but they are actually being reared in the big, bad internet world. Today, the statistics show that 84% of school-going children are on social media. Apparently, a significant amount of, it depends on what demography we are talking about 79% have their own devices. Teenagers check their phones over 150 times a day. So they're not growing up in your homes. They're growing up in the internet. And in the internet, there are things like, there's another statistics that I have to tell you. The professional premium dating apps, India is supposedly the second number to USA. Tinder app being the number 1 and Bumblebee being the number 2. And who do you think is using these apps? Tinder is an adult dating app that is being used by youngsters. That is the reality where we need to address communication to our parents. It is important to recognize that we really do not know what is happening in the lives of our children, because the device can take them anywhere.
Lovely. In 2 months of the launch of this book has already been the #1 bestseller. You've also represented this book at the UN COP Summit, and this happens to be the only book to have ever been represented at a UN COP event. How does it feel?
It feels like a shocker. I did not expect it to happen. I'm extremely grateful for it. But it's also a validation that a book like this that talks openly about sex, about drugs, about romance, about intimacy, about date rape, about sexting, about every real thing that is happening to children was very required. It is a validation that parents need guidance today, because how we grew up is not how our children are growing up. And let me tell you that when I was writing or compiling this book, I had to shatter the first glass ceiling. When you run schools, or if you're a teacher or an educator, you're at the receiving end. All parents, all press will say, yes, everything happens in school. You're talking about drugs, they learn drugs in school. You're talking about intimacy and romance, it happens in schools. So we are at the receiving end. The first glass ceiling I had to shatter is to say enough is enough. Because the fact of the matter is that we are losing children, that children are not growing up the way this should. And it's enough that we as educators no longer be scared to openly talk about these topics because they are required to be spoken about. So it's a validation that this book was required. Otherwise, there's no reason why it should be
In
better.
fact, owing to the validation, we got a survey done amongst the parents who have had access to this book. And about 75% of the parents studied in 1 week of getting the book. Of which 90% have affirmed the need of such book. So thank you, ma'am, for this beautiful book. It is actually a classic in itself. So to all the lovely audience here, I am a parent of a 21-year-old. I have saved one copy of this book in my almirah because when my daughter becomes a parent, that book will be useful to her, right? So it's equally useful to each and every one of you. Look, Shroff has been kind enough to give a copy to everyone who is present here. We have about 25 odd copies at this point in time. I think a colleague of mine will have it there. So while that, if you guys go out for a coffee or you go out for the expo session, you can take a book and get it signed from her. She'll be available for the signatures. For those who are not able to get a copy in hand today, so there is a QR scanner which is placed on the table. So you can use the QR scanner and use the third option, which is the complimentary option. The spare charge of 50 rupees for the courier for the book to come from Ahmedabad will be just a week. But it'll come to your hands on the phone in a courier, right? So whoever can't get the copy today, please take it online from the through the scanner. It's also available on Amazon in case you want to buy it later. Yeah? Thank you very much for this opportunity, Hyderabad. Thank you, ma'am, for your life.
Thank you so much. Thank